Welcome to Creating Connection with me, your host, Dr. T, where we will navigate being human together. We'll do this through conversations, exploring the challenges and joys of life, uncovering insights and strategies to create meaningful connections, to foster personal growth and find solace in the collective wisdom of our diverse community. Drawing from a unique blend of academic expertise and personal experiences, I will dive into the joys and complexities of aging, death, dying, grief, and body image. With a blend of humor and compassion and understanding, we will forge connections that transcend geographical boundaries and unite us in our shared humanity. When we come together, the possibilities are endless. Creating Connection with me, Dr. T, starts now. Hello, everyone. I'm your host, Dr. T, and you're listening to Creating Connection on Transformation Talk Radio. Stay with me for the next hour as I discuss nonviolent communication with my teacher, Aya Caspi. Nonviolent communication has changed my life in profound ways. I'll just read Aya's bio first. Aya's bio. Okay, Aya's bio. So nonviolent communication. I first learned of this process or approach to communication in March of 2022. So I'm fairly new with it. So about a year and a half in, but it has again made such a profound difference in my life. Aya Caspi is who I learned from in a workshop when I was living in Reno, Nevada. She is a certified trainer with the Center for Nonviolent Communication, which is based in California. She's dedicated herself to applying radical, uncompromising nonviolence in every small detail of life, starting with the ongoing lavatory of her family. And this includes her 3 children. Aya has spent the last 15 years bringing her unique blend of vision, practical clarity, and deep commitment to transformation to settings as varied as schools, family, mediation, social change communities, nonprofit organizations, and media. With a special focus on kids and family programming, Aya has served as the educational consultant on several preschool series, creating original curriculums, and consulting on show development and scripting. Her client list includes Warner Brothers, Discovery, HBO Max, Cartoon Network, 9 Story Media Group, Cartoon Salon, and Field Day Entertainment. Aya has been sharing the work of nonviolent communication internationally via online classes and in-person retreats. She continually grapples with the joys and challenges of being raised in Israel and finds deep, open hope in applying nonviolent communication to the context of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Thank you all for being here today. Nonviolent communication, I had been hearing about this approach. People would be like, "Oh, have you read this book? Have you read this book?" And I thought, I'm not violent in my communication. I'm so nice. I'm Minnesota, which that's a whole different conversation. But thinking about, I was like, I am kind and generous usually in my speaking. And this approach really talks about how sometimes that actually can be violent because you're not being direct. And as I've mentioned here before, I am an actively recovering people pleaser. And sometimes that led me to try and get my needs met in this kind of circular backdoor, dare I say, manipulative way. I hated seeing that about myself. I hated kind of realizing that that's what I was doing. But as soon as I did, I was able to change it because, again, with self-awareness or insight, then you can make concrete choices and decisions. And so coupled with meditation and mindfulness and that journey that I had been on, this seemed like a key piece of the puzzle to me. This is my book here, and I don't know if you could see how it is dog-eared and highlighted, and there are notes everywhere in this because it has made such a difference. One of the things that it did was it invited my own needs into the conversation. So I had been in this kind of habit of focusing on other people's needs, trying to anticipate their needs. Again, all under that people-pleasing kind of umbrella and codependency and all that good stuff. And what happened then is learning about this was the idea that I could ask for my needs to be met and free the other person up to be able to say yes or no. Because as we'll learn from Aya, and we are so lucky to have her here today, but as we'll learn from Aya, it isn't about a strategy to get your needs met. It is about knowing and understanding what your needs are, being able to articulate them, and then the other person can say yes or no. And I am not capturing probably the liberation that I experienced, but it is, and with no hyperbole, the reason why I was able to move back to Minnesota. And that might be surprising, and it does sound over the top. But when I was talking to Charlie last night about it, he was like, well, I mean, there was a lot of factors. And I said, yes, but remember learning this piece and coming back to really where my people pleasing tendencies had been developed, and then the rut and the kind of habit of people pleasing was really deep here. So I I want to say that better, but that it was a big piece of like saying like, okay, my needs matter. I can ask for them to be met, and people can meet them or not, and I don't have to try and manipulate or do strategies in order to get them met. As well as then I can also listen to people in a different way, and I can listen to them say what their needs are without thinking that I have to be the one that is filling those needs. And again, I hope this becomes increasingly clear as we go on today. Marshall Rosenberg is the person who created this framework or process. So the nonviolent communication process was created as an approach to communication to support partnership, resolve conflict within people, relationships, and society, using empathy as a bridge to connection and understanding. And I love this definition of empathy from its creator, Marshall Rosenberg, not from the creator of empathy, but the author of Nonviolent Communication and the creator of this process. He describes empathy as a respectful understanding of what others are experiencing. Instead of offering empathy, we often have a strong urge to give advice or reassurance to explain our own position or feeling. Empathy, however, calls upon us to empty our mind and listen to others with our whole being. And that ties back to episode 3, where we talked with Heather about mindful communication. So it is about being present and not trying to anticipate. It's about being aware of communication blocks. It's being aware of like our own reaction to what other people are saying, and trying to like approach our communication with non-judgmental awareness. And then also approach our own needs and desires with non-judgmental compassion, curiosity, all of the things, and you're going to kind of keep hearing these key words because they are such a foundation for being in relationship and being in connection, right? So if we can approach things non-judgmentally, if we can approach people and ourselves with curiosity, maybe even a little humor, and we can start to understand what is going on. This talk, or inviting Aya on, came shortly after October 7th. And she was gracious in saying that she would be willing to talk to us here in this space about this communication approach, because there are so many things. This is like, if you've never heard of this concept or you're just dabbling, this is a way to meet challenging family situations. We're going in, some of us here are going into holiday season, or we're smack dab in the middle of it, where we might be seeing people that we don't see very often. There could be challenges. This is a great way to do that. And then with the very real awful things that are happening in the world, and there's a division, and you might be even seeing that in social media feeds or in news outlets, and how can we bridge this and communicate about these really tough things with empathy and understanding and non-judgment. So I'm very excited to see Aya on here, and as well as connect you with the work that she is doing. And as always, at the end, we will offer some action items so that you can take this information into your own lives and apply it. So we're going to take a quick break. So you're listening to Creating Connection with Dr. T. We'll take a quick break, and when we come back, we will be joined by Aya Caspi. We're back on Creating Connection with Dr. T. On this segment, we welcome Aya Caspi to the show. Aya, welcome. I am so happy to see you. Thank you for taking the time to be here and agreeing to contribute to the show with your presence.
Of course. Thank you for inviting me, Teresa. I'm delighted to be here.
Yeah, I was saying in the intro that I met you at the workshop at the center in Reno in March of 22. So I am only like a year and a half into this work, where it has made such a profound difference in such a short amount of time. I know there's so much more for me to learn, and I'm really excited to share this with people because, again, it's made such a difference in my life. And I'm wondering, what led you to this work, Aya?
Wow. Been quite a journey, Teresa. Maybe it starts on just my conscious entering into life is my first memory in life. And my first memory in life is being in Israel, 2 years old, and there is the siren and the war, and my father goes to the army, and my mother takes me to the basement, or wherever you call it, where you're supposed to be protected. And I think it really starts there, just growing up in a war zone and being of a Jewish tradition and being taught about love your neighbor as thyself, and not seeing anyone around me being to model that or embody that, and searching for years, just searching a spiritual path to live in peace, learning how to live in peace, both inside of me, in my internal microcosmos, and outside of me, in the family, with neighbors, with community, and with Palestinians.
Yeah.
We are right now in the midst of a very horrific war. Yeah. I'm very far away from there because I moved to California at the end of 2007. And shortly after, I was introduced to Nonviolent Communication, which was the end of that journey of searching.
Okay.
And I think why it was the end is because I finally found, after learning so many teachings, a teaching that was both spiritual and practical, meaning it's just combined my spiritual quest and my passion for language, and really realizing that that's the missing link, that we need a new language, a language of peace.
I love that. A language of peace. And what you're pointing to is that, you grow up with these messages in your faith, and then you're seeing in the reality, this kind of
the gap.
The gap or the big swing and a miss. And so,
yes.
So then coming here, you're here, you start learning this. And as you said, we're in this horrific war at this time. And again, thank you for being generous with your own time, in the midst of this, to share how that language of peace, and how can that bridge? Because I mentioned in the opening that, I'm seeing on social media and I'm seeing in the news that there's just these like this black and white, and this, if you think this way, then you're this, and if you think that way, then and how do we come? I mean, maybe this is a bigger conversation, but how are you moment to moment being far away, but also having experienced that embodied sirens, war in your home? How are you using this to support that?
Yeah, maybe this is for me the first time that I'm outside Israel during a war like this. I mean, I haven't seen anything like this during my lifetime. And so I have to say that gives me distance So, and it's easier, to search and to learn and to grow and to, when you are not in the midst of this kind of alarm zone.
Mm-hmm.
So I think leaving was part of what enabled me to do this work. And what I've been trying to do is to really, just choose language, choose a way to think about it that is not non-judgmental, that is not choosing sizes, that is advocating for life, advocating for human needs, and, and caring for the whole, while also acknowledging, the what is happening.
Yeah.
Just acknowledging the power difference, acknowledging, the reality of what is.
Yeah.
And I always see that, that's my struggle, is that when I talk to, my people in Israel, my family, my friends, they might easily interpret the way I speak about this as a betrayal of Israel, or being accused, as someone who lost credibility to talk about this because I'm not there.
Right.
And when I talk to, people who are pro-Palestine, they can easily see me as someone who is identified with Israelis. Because if you don't agree, then you're being seen as, the other, supporting the other party.
Yes.
And it just brings me more clarity that there are no people who talk about this in a way that is holding everyone with care and caring for all the needs in the situation. And so it's a challenge, and it's kind of, there's a lot of loneliness with it.
Mm-hmm.
And it is growing both in the NVC community and other communities who are practicing nonviolence. And I still yet longing for more companionship.
Yes. And I think that is so beautiful, because it is about humanity. It is about communicating with empathy and holding the needs of all, which, when people are in that literal fight and flight, it's hard to pause and say, well, how can I be, present with your needs, and how can I be empathetic with your needs when you clearly aren't understanding mine? And so I think that navigating and learning these ways of saying that it's not about, only my needs are being met or only your needs are being met. It's like it can be both.
Well, it has to be both. If we want to have peace, a sustainable peace.
Yeah.
If we want, that's the basic assumption of nonviolent communication is everyone's needs matter, all life matter.
Yeah.
And, yes, sometimes, you want to focus on the people and prioritize and center the people whose needs been dropped, in order to balance that. But overall, we need to care for everyone, because otherwise we just see what we've been seeing, which is one party get their needs met at the expense of others. Then you see retaliation, and then it's kind of flipped. And we just go from one form of oppression to another.
Yes. And it is happening within families, communities. It's not just, oh, here's these governments. This is at an individual level and a global level that we need to talk about these things. So
exactly.
Would you be, so for people who have never heard of nonviolent communication, we kind of just jumped into the highest level of how we can use this, but maybe we'll walk it back a little bit and help people understand what nonviolent communication is at its core. We've talked around it, but there's the tenets, and if you wouldn't mind sharing, maybe how you shared with me at the workshop.
Yes. I probably won't remember to say the exact same thing, but I'll try.
Yeah. Well, you don't need to say the same thing, but just, I learned so much.
Yeah. So Nonviolent communication is a body of work that was founded by Dr. Marshall Rosenberg at the late 60s. He was working in Southern California in schools, working on racial integration.
Mm.
And that's when it came together. I mean, he was heavily influenced by many people, Martin Luther King, Gandhi, and also Carl Rogers, who is considered the father of empathy in modern psychology. And it's basically an attempt to bring the principles of nonviolence into communication with the clarity that language and communication is what we do all day long, both inside ourselves and with others. And there's a way that we've been communicating that has contributed to violence and disconnection from life. Mm. And it's a kind of like a language structure that we inherit in our culture. And we all learn this, and we all kind of perpetuate this disconnection from life. And it's very painful and brings a lot of suffering. And he came up with this new way to communicate that has principles that helps us connect with life. So one of the things is shifting from moralistic judgments, shifting from right-wrong thinking. Anything that implies rightness or goodness, wrongness or rightness. That by itself, if you just take this principle, it's a revolution. Because, you know, as you saw in the workshop, people, when they learn NVC, the first thing they notice is that we use judgments all the time. Mm-hmm. And that contributes to separation. Even if we don't say those, like inside ourselves, if we judge ourselves, it creates separation within ourselves. And it also creates separation with others. Mm.
So you're saying, I just want to pause and say, so you're saying if we have judgment, whether it's overt, said out loud or whatever, but if I'm looking at a situation, an individual person or myself with judgment, then I'm creating separation. I'm creating kind of this disconnection.
Yeah, I'm contributing to separation overall in the world. And you can take an example. If I think I'm stupid, she's stupid, he's racist, she's exaggerating, he's brilliant. I mean, all of these are so embedded in our language. Mm-hmm. And what happens is that we put people in boxes, we decide what they are, mm-hmm. and we disconnect from their humanity and from the wholeness of life. And then we respond likely in a way that is perpetuating the disconnection.
Okay. So we start with understanding that it's embedded in our language. It's embedded with how we're even taught, and it's happening so quick. We're putting people in boxes. We're like, you're this, I'm this, da, da, da. And then that is creating separation. So how do you start moving from disconnection to contributing to connection and wholeness?
Yes. So Marshall said, every judgment is a tragic expression of an unmet need. Mm-hmm. So that means that those judgments are like they're like a thought structure, but mm-hmm. Beyond them there is a feeling, there is a need, there is a palpable heart, mm-hmm. And let's connect with those feelings. Let's connect with those needs, because we all share these needs, and that's where we find connection. We all share the same heart. So if we start communicating at the level of feelings and needs, we are more likely to stay connected to life, to reach other people's hearts, and to help them reach our own hearts. Mm.
So it's connecting to, and I was showing earlier that I have, this book is so marked up, but there's a page, and then you can also get worksheets that talk about like what feelings and needs and, when they're not being met. Now, I've sat with this and because I'd be like, oh, I'm mad, I'm this, I'm that. And I've actually had to like go, look at this, look up the definition to help me even start giving myself language to my own needs and feelings, because we kind of stop at like the top four or
Yeah,
something.
right. Like our vocabulary is very limited because
Yes.
we basically are not educated to connect with our needs. There's a lot of like shame and guilt about even having needs. It's not, popular to because it's related. It's connected to the sense of dependency. Like if I have needs, then I need others, right? And
Right.
our culture is all about self-sufficiency and independence and doing it all by myself, but that's not
Mm,
sustainable and it's not how life works. And so it requires, yes, this reclaiming process,
hmm
reclaiming of, again, I mean, connecting with those needs and owning them and seeing the beauty and the vulnerability and the innocence
mm,
of, yeah, we are every given moment we are motivated by these universal human needs, and it's not going away. And if we repress them or oppress them and hide them even from ourselves, they're just going to grow bigger and louder inside of us and run us unconsciously.
right, right. And I think for me, one of the biggest pieces of this was recognizing that I'm included in the need bubble. Like it's okay for me to have needs, and to recognize where I was I mean, because I was the idea of like violent communication. I was like, I'm not violent. I'm so nice. But
Right.
really, truly, it was because I was using kind of these backdoor strategies or I mean, and I manipulation to get my needs met but to say directly, like, I need
Yeah.
this, but with
Yes.
also allowing the freedom for someone to say, I can't fulfill that need for you. So could you say a little bit more about
Right.
this? Like, okay, I've
Yes.
identified I have a need. Now I express a need. I've gotten over my
Right.
shame and whatever, and I've acknowledged I have a need. So then what happens when we're going back and
Yeah.
forth with this?
Yeah. Yeah. We talked about nonviolent communication being a spiritual practice. So it's
Mm,
always a both end. So
mhm.
yes, I have those needs. These needs matter. And I also want to honor other people's choice. Other people are not responsible for to meet my needs. It's no one's job to meet my needs. And so I can make requests, and people love contributing to other people's needs. You can recognize it, immediately that when we become aware of a need, there is an impulse towards it. That's how life is structured. But we want to have choice
Mm.
because choice is a human need,
Yes.
a very important one. And so one of the principles is shifting from demands to requests. And requests mean that we are open to a no,
Mm.
knowing that there are many ways to meet needs. And if someone says no, it's only because they say yes to other needs of theirs. And we can find other ways to meet our needs. And even if we don't find a way to meet our need, we can still matter.
Mm.
We are all capable. Living with unmet needs is actually the test of nonviolence, is the capacity to live with unmet needs. And as long as our needs matter, as long as they are acknowledged, um, we can accept that sometimes our needs are not going to be met. So yes, that's a very important, to acknowledge that I want to ask for what I need and I want to be open to a no.
And so, even being like knowing that your needs matter, that could even just be I say to myself, my needs matter, or I acknowledge I have needs and they matter. I don't need to get
Yes,
reassurance from someone else that my needs matter, which I think I
right.
used to do a lot of. And of course, it's
Yeah,
a work in progress. But
yeah,
having that freedom for someone to say no, and I think and I've noticed this with my relationship with my husband that, when I started learning this and practicing and playing with this idea of saying, okay, I have a need, I could feel his hesitation because it never was okay for him to say no before, right? Because I'd be like,
Right.
because, and then to be able, and I remember there was a moment and he was like, oh, and I was like, yes, you can say no. And then there's a freedom and there's this spaciousness with, oh, I can have a need, and maybe my need is for connection. And maybe that means I come and do some art with myself, and it doesn't have to be met by him, or I could reach out to a friend
Yes.
And have that.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Because that.
And I think why it gets so challenging for people, that part, first, once people finally, learn that they have needs and they can meet their needs and ask for what they need, there is this kind of compensation for all these years of dropping yourself. Now I'm here and here are my needs and my needs matter, and you can have that kind of rebellious, obnoxious energy.
Yeah, okay.
And there's also wounding, I think, a collective wounding around mattering, because we grow up in power over structures and systems. And so many times our experience growing up is that our needs don't matter in our families and in schools. It's only the adults' needs. They decide what's right, what's wrong, what we should do and what we shouldn't do. And it's many times, we don't have a voice and our needs get judged. So there is a challenge to hear no, because many times people interpret the no as my needs don't matter. And it was such a gift with nonviolent communication, this kind of uncoupling. The need matter, my needs matter, even if there is a no.
Yeah. I think one of the, and I'm like, is this the healthiest thought I've ever had? So Charlie and I were having a dialogue, and I actually asked him, do you have the capacity to listen to this idea I have? Which usually I would just like launch into it. And then if he'd shut me down because he was doing with whatever, then I'd feel like, oh, he doesn't care. And I'd have all these stories about it versus I actually said, do you have the capacity? Something I learned from you. Thank you so much. And in this process. And he, at that time, he was like, no, I don't. And I said, oh, okay. And I think in that moment, I had the realization that, oh, I could share this. I started doing like notes on my phone. I can share this in a note on my phone. If it feels like urgent, okay, I can type this down, or I could call someone else who might have the space and capacity in that moment if I felt like I really wanted to dialogue about it. And in that moment gave such, again, freedom, liberation from being attached to how my need would get met.
Exactly. And that attachment to how our needs are going to be met, it's that attachment with a strategy, that we have one idea about it has to happen by this time, by this person, in this way. And so there is a lot of freedom that comes with non-attachment to an outcome, to a specific strategy. Liberation. And that's another, shift from scarcity to this kind of scarcity thinking, to this kind of like abundance, or there are many ways to meet needs. They're basically endless in theory. Of course, it's not always possible. Sometimes it's constrained by the options and the circumstances.
And then maybe that even within the option or in the circumstances and conditions, maybe even knowing I have a need that can't be met right now, again, coming back and saying like my need matters, even if it can't be met right now, even if I can't see how it could be met in this moment. It
matters, period, because every need is an expression of life.
Okay.
And life is sacred. What are these needs? Like connection, community, meaning, inspiration. There is a list. It's a finite list. It's not infinite. And each one of these needs is an expression of our humanity. for our co-humanity. And we're always going to walk towards our needs until the last breath. That's never going to change. But walking towards our needs doesn't mean that we're going to coerce or control others or life. That's not in our hands. And that's part of our vulnerability. And embracing that vulnerability is empowering, actually. Instead of hiding it.
Yes. Okay. So say a little bit more, because like vulnerability gets to be a tricky word, along with, like you said, it's kind of ingrained that we might have some shame around needs.
So our vulnerability is, I see it, is existential. We come to this world having all these needs, human needs. They are always there, and we never know if they're going to be met or not. That's vulnerable. We don't have control over that. We also don't know if our loved ones' needs are going to be met or not. We have finite bodies. We have finite resources. Our planet has finite resources. All of this is part of the existential vulnerability.
Okay.
And I think in this process of protection of our vulnerability, which our language is reflecting, we started to hide our feelings and needs.
Okay.
And just communicate at the level of strategies and protect ourselves. And so we got this idea that having feelings, having needs is a weakness because it's vulnerable. But because our vulnerability is not going to go away, actually embracing it is a source of strength, because life is designed to support our vulnerability through interdependence and through that flow of resources into needs. And once we accept our vulnerability and we make it known, we can invite support. Rumi has a poem about it. It's called Increase Your Need. And I'm only going to quote one line from it. He says, "So quickly, needy one, increase your need so that the sea of abundance can surge up in loving kindness."
Oh, that's beautiful. I'll have to look up that poem and include that. Maybe I'll do a post on that. That's beautiful.
And the way I translate it into nonviolent communication is that quickly, reclaim your needs and make them known by making requests and not demands. Because when you make these requests and you make your needs known, you invite support into your life. And that's the power of requests and just the power of vulnerability.
And the openness to almost non-attachment for how those needs get met or don't get met, because I think
I'm not going to know.
Right. And
being so with unknown.
Yeah. That's a doozy, isn't it?
That's another source of strength, because the truth is that we don't know what's going to happen.
Right.
We can influence what's going to happen by making choices that are inviting life to care for our needs. For example, when I make requests and not demands, they're more likely that I'm going to invite goodwill from others. When I speak vulnerably and not judgmentally, there's more chances that I will invite goodwill. When I honor others people's choice, there's more likelihood that they're going to want to support me. When I take responsibility for my feelings and needs and not blame others. I mean, all these principles are designed to create the optimal conditions for us to invite what we need. That's the magic and power of nonviolence.
That is true. I think one of my natural kind of things, if you look at different frameworks and like the Enneagram, I'm the helper and all of these things. So I do, I love helping. I love supporting. That's kind of ingrained. But, something you and I talked about in one of our coaching sessions was being on the receiving end of demand energy. and how, I mean, and I just shut down with that. And you had identified that and used that phrase,
Yeah.
oh, that's demand energy. So could you
Mm-hmm.
offer like something, like how do you meet it? If you're on the receiving end of demand energy, how would you respond to that? Because
Yeah.
we are going into the holidays. Or we are in the midst of
Right.
the holidays, depending on if or what you
Yes.
celebrate. And there can be that, especially in a family of
Yeah.
origin.
I love this question because it brings me to these principles that with nonviolent communication, we not only choose how to communicate and express ourselves, but we can
Mm.
also choose how to hear others.
Mm.
How to hear others. What do we choose to hear? And how to frame things in a way that it is uh, inviting the most connection, understanding, and empowerment. So, for example, yes, people are going to talk in the habitual way, which is they're going to express judgments, they're going to express their demands, talk with shoulds and have tos and must and ought to. These are also like so embedded in our
Hmm.
language. But I can choose to hear the request behind the demand and the feeling and the need behind it because I have the capacity for empathy. And because we all share the same needs, I can put myself in their shoes and imagine what might be going on for them. Many times, this demand energy is a cover up for vulnerability, is a
Mm.
cover up for distress. We don't trust that others will care for us just because we have needs. That's part of the wounding. We don't trust that there's going to be goodwill flowing in our direction. And when something really matters to us and we are having a crisis of imagination on how we're going to meet our needs, then we tend
Mm.
to use more force to kind of
Okay.
create that fact that, you know, that has to happen. But of course, it doesn't work this way. And what I
Okay.
found that if I try to hear, because every demand is a perceived demand.
Mm.
It depends on what meaning am I making of what other people are saying.
Oh, interesting. So then it does come back to again kind of grounding in your own, maybe even in your own body. And so because there are situations or cues of like habits in communication, right? One I give is that, back,
Mm-hmm.
my husband used to quirk an eyebrow and I'd be like, oh, all right. So he's feeling argumentative. And so like, it's probably not going to go well. And so
Mm-hmm.
what you're saying is that, if you're being met with demand energy, can you maybe open to your own compassion and empathy so that you could actually hear what's underneath?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. There's always some sort of vulnerability, some sort of innocence, basically some feelings and some needs that are not being directly communicated.
Okay. And I
Maybe
think
this
for,
person is scared. Many times when
yeah,
people are scared, they come off aggressive.
yeah.
Maybe this person is in despair about their needs being cared for.
Mm,
Maybe this person feels helpless. These are the feelings that will typically um, show up in the form of demands and power over. We cover
okay.
up for the vulnerability by being forceful.
Okay, which then helps with the idea of, kind of acknowledging that maybe there's some shame in our own, acknowledgement of needs, and then understanding that maybe this
Yeah,
person is feeling some shame in that, or unease that their needs are important, and then to kind of come
yeah,
back to what it's meant to this actively recovering people pleaser is that when I hear a need, I don't always have to say yes. If I don't have the capacity and the willingness to meet that need. But
yes,
I was always kind of in this knee-jerk reaction of like, oh, you express a need, or I even think that I imagine that you have a need, I'm going to meet that. And which is draining and not sustainable.
yes, yes, yes. And you are not responsible for other people's needs.
Yeah.
And every time you say yes, that is basically submission or compliance. Everyone is going to pay for it.
Yes.
You're going to pay for it. The other person is going to pay for it because you're going to feel resentment and going to retaliate at some point or punish them or just withdraw from the connection in some subtle way. So, yeah, it's always like checking in with yourself. Do I have the willingness, which is about choice? And do I have the capacity, which is about resources? Sometimes you have the willingness, but you don't have the capacity. It's an overstretch. Sometimes you have the capacity, you don't have the willingness. And I want us to honor, the life within us.
Yes.
Because if not, we engage again in an act of self-oppression, and that's costly.
Mm-hmm. And one of the things, one of the key things, and I repeat this to everyone, so I want to repeat it here, is that I was talking to you about some situation and I said, I'll just suck it up. And you stopped me and you said, would you want someone to say, oh, I'm going to see Teresa, but I'm just going to suck it up. I don't really feel like it. And then hearing that, I was able to be like, well, no, if someone was sucking it up to be with me, I would rather be home alone. I could read, I could do one of many things. And that freedom of saying like, oh, why would I bring that energy to some other experience? Like, why would I bring that, kind of, even if I thought I was, a superb actress, there's an underlying current, like you said, of resentment or resistance. And I thought, oh, so that has changed how I respond to requests or even demand energy. And I do take some time to check in. And so I think that, as we look at as how we move forward with nonviolent communication, what I like to leave people with, we have still have a few minutes, but I was wondering, what action items could people take, once they're done listening to this, to start bringing this into their reality?
Yeah. So I think, just the zero step is almost like that shift from right wrong thinking into needs consciousness. It's this assumption of innocence that everything human beings are doing or saying is an attempt to meet one or more of the human needs, no different than our own. And a lot of what I see in my work is just the level of self-hate that we have in our culture, like the level of self-judgment, like just what's going on in our heads from morning till night is always like that criticism and judgment. So if we can start, I give the image that of like, okay, now you swim in that ocean of judgment or right wrong thinking, and you start conquering like pieces of land. Every time you choose to pause and connect with a need of yours, and identify that need, identify that feeling behind calling myself stupid or calling myself whatever names. What am I really feeling? What is the need that I'm longing that is not met right now for me? And over time, I found that, the sea of judgments kind of shrinks and you start to have more land than water. And it becomes easier. At the beginning, it's really hard because it's the water we swim in. And we do the same with others. Every time our needs are not met, we go to judging the other person for being wrong, bad, cold. And so if we can start exercising empathy and connecting, okay, this person chose to do this. There is a need that they were trying to meet. Yes, it didn't meet my own needs. Maybe they didn't even meet their original needs they were trying to meet, likely. And it was an attempt. So what is the intention behind this tragic expression?
Yeah.
And I think that just starting there is beginning of a consciousness transformation,
Yeah. And
framing
I
everything around needs. Yeah.
and I think, like I don't know if you saw my eyes, but I was like, because again, every time I'm with you, I learn, and I am so grateful for all that you bring to my life, and that we get to share this with others. But this idea that even my own self-talk is a need. There's a need under that, if it whatever that is. So
Yeah.
I think that is kind of a little bit of a mic drop moment, and we
Yeah.
have 2 minutes
Yeah.
left. I would love for you to share how can people work with you, or what things are you offering in the new year?
Um, I'm offering an in-person, there is going to be an in-person workshop in Santa Ana, CA, Southern California, called Connecting at the Edges,
Mm.
which is how to transform polarization, and especially how to listen and how to express when we don't agree with others, or when others don't agree with us, which I think is so needed. It's going to be a 2 day kind of mini retreat. And there's also the NVC conference happening at the end of January. That's online with 13 trainers from all over the world. I'm going to offer a session there on connecting across differences.
Oh, fantastic. And you have an every other Friday, which I have not joined yet, but that's a Zoom, I believe. I am
Yes,
going,
the coaching calls.
yes. And thank you again for being here and sharing your insights and wisdom. It's such powerful and important work. And so I just want to remind folks that I offer a free live guided meditation on Zoom every Monday, 1 p.m. Eastern, 12 p.m. Central, and 10 a.m. Pacific. I will not be offering a meditation this next Monday, December 25th, because I will be traveling, but I will be back on January 1st in 2024. So let's start the year and join me to start the year mindfully together. So thank you all. Thank you, Aya, and thank you all for tuning in to Creating Connection with Dr. T. I'm so grateful that you chose to spend this time with us today. Reach out with any questions or comments or show ideas, and it does help me if you'd share the show. Join me on the first and third Wednesdays of every month at 1 p.m. Eastern, 12 Central, 10 a.m. Pacific. And until then, take good care of yourself and others. See you back here on the 3rd. Thank you for listening to Creating Connection with me, Dr. T. You can join me by tuning in on the first and third Wednesdays every month at 10 a.m. Pacific on transformationtalkradio.com, where we will navigate being human together. Being human means that we all have a body, and we will all experience loss, grief, and aging if we're lucky. Let's join together on this journey of exploration, support, and mutual learning. I love bringing people together, and on Creating Connection, we are a conversation away from understanding another person and, quite frankly, ourselves. For more information, visit ccwithdrt.com.